Hi, Alicia. Welcome to the Teacher's Point of View. Thanks for having us today. Thanks for sort of coming on the show today. Can you sort of explain to everybody your journey and sort of what you do and how you've got to where you've got to?
Hi, I'm TJ. My name is Alicia. So thank you so much for having me on your show this morning. It's a great pleasure. I started out in teaching purely by accident, really. I think I went in to do some voluntary work at a local school in their English department, and so I was actually deployed to teach Year 7 English. At the time, they were reading a book called Journey to Joburg in Year 7. And it so happened that I was told at the time that I was brilliant with these young Year 7s, and their progress had increased within such a short time. And as a result of that, both the head teacher and the head of the English department encouraged me to take up the teaching training program. So I did that, and whilst I was actually training to become a teacher, I found myself to be head of business and economics, basically head of faculty, head of quality across the school, and basically leading CPD trainings for trainees such as myself. And I was actually quite surprised that I was in that position in such a short time, because I'm absolutely certain that there are times I had no idea what I was doing, but I had great believers, and they empowered me to do the best and be the best that I can be, and encouraged me and ensure that I had the best mentoring and the best coaching whenever I needed. And you know, that I've always had someone there to turn to whenever I needed advice. And so once my training finished, I then went on to actually began mentoring and coaching practitioners across the school, and then leading across the network in terms of teaching and learning, CPDs and insects and so on. And so basically, I would say really I was quite fortunate in a sense that I had the right professionals, the right practitioners around me to lead by examples, and those that I could actually emulate and bring in my own characteristic, my own personality, and so on. So that journey for me was built from those who believed in me, those who invested in. Actually, I was told that I'm quite tenacious. At the time, I was like, oh, okay, big word. But along the way, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. My students were paramount in the essence of my development, and building relationships with them within the classroom and outside the classroom, within the playgrounds, canteen, and sharing what I was actually doing with these young people was amazing, because that then transpired to my classroom. When they came to my classroom, they wanted to learn because I'd created a love for learning environment for them. And because I'd not just walked around the school and just be a teacher, and just I actually sat, have lunch with them, went into the courtyard, played basketball with them, kicked the football, and little things like that, just finding out what they actually do like, how was their weekend, and then bring that into the curriculum, into the classroom. So from there, I believe quite possibly not too long after that, I then became an assistant head teacher, because I had the experience behind me for leading school, leading network CPD trainings for different schools, and visiting other schools in different areas, and looking at what they're doing in their school and implementing strategies for them to actually adapt in their school, going back and monitoring those strategies, and looking at the impact that it has, at the measurability of that, and reporting back to them. So being in leadership, it is quite challenging. It has its reward, and it's quite challenging. I think some people have misconcepted ideas about being in leadership. They think that one just sits in the classroom and do the administrative daily duties, but it's never the case. It's far from that. You've got to reach out to the community, reach out to the bread and butter of the school, the middle leaders, the support workers, and those people that actually holds up the school itself. And so far, I'm actually enjoying myself, really.
Just sort of picking up on what you said about it's this misconception of senior leaders, and I think that's a really important point, actually, because I've spoken to many teachers in my time that sort of explain, well, they sort of question why senior leaders get paid so much when teachers are on the front line in classrooms working with the kids on a daily basis, especially with there being such budget constraints within schools. What would you say to those teachers of that question, why you're on higher money than those teachers?
I think that there's a disparity. There are some sort of confusion there. I don't believe that is the case at all. I genuinely don't believe that is the case, because you do have teachers in the classroom that earns quite a lot more than senior leaders.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there are people out there who will actually tell you the same thing.
no, of course. I mean, how hard is it to be a senior leader? I mean, obviously you've gone and you've rapidly sort of progressed in your career. I mean, not every teacher sort of embarks on the same journey as you, and you've sort of gone from an NQT to head of faculty to assistant head, sort of within the space of a very short time, right? I mean, like I said, not very many teachers do that. Sometimes it takes teachers 10 years to 15 years to sort of get into SLT roles. I mean, what has been different for you? What do you think that's made you stand out compared to other NQTs?
I wouldn't say it was completely plain sailing. There were obstacles, but it's to find that inner power to push yourself forward and to rise above those obstacles or those situations that you might find yourself in, and also to be reflective. I think once you're reflective on your daily practice, that can be the most powerful aspects for any practitioners, is to look at what you're doing and to think, how could I have done that differently? How could I have responded differently? And how could I have addressed that situation differently? And what is it that I could have done? You know, look at your teaching. How could I have planned my lesson properly? How could I have differentiated it? And how could I have reached out to my teaching groups differently? And be reflective of your daily practice. So I would say far most first is to be reflective. And I won't say that reflection comes easy. It's quite difficult to be reflective. It's difficult to look at yourself and to acknowledge when you've not gotten it right, and it's difficult to actually say it out loud and to put it pen to paper. So that comes with practice in itself. And I think for me, my background had a great deal to do with how I look at things and how I approach things. Being the eldest of 7, I had a lot of responsibility at home. So responsibility was always embedded. And education at home was quite serious. So I took that into the classroom. I took the seriousness of education and empowering young people within the classroom. And for me, I made a pact to myself that no children that I come in contact with will ever have to question why they've not gotten that grade. Because I would, stay in the classroom with them. I would go in on weekends to ensure that those gaps that were identified during my data process, or looking at my data, or looking at my assessment, were shared with those young people, and ensure that I communicated effectively with parents and those stakeholders who are concerned with those young persons. Okay, have a look at this. This is what I've discovered. This is where your child is. How best can we work together to ensure that we close those gaps, and look at the gaps and share those gaps with the young person? What is it that you as a child or a student can do? What would you like to do? What would you like to work at? How best can I facilitate your need? And I think once you go into that approach and you have the passion, it should never be about the salary. One does not go into a profession, particularly teaching, for salary. Certainly, if that's the case, then I believe you're in the wrong job.
Absolutely.
Because it has to be your passion.
Absolutely. I mean, like for people that are sort of considering teaching, because I think one of the biggest difficulties in attracting sort of graduates to the teaching profession is probably salary, isn't it? I mean, because like if you're a maths graduate, why wouldn't you go become a financial analyst, an economist, or something with a little bit more sort of, well, with more money, right? And I think obviously with recruitment retention being such a big topic within education at the moment. How can we attract more graduates to teaching? Because there is less money, there is a lot of hard work, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of sort of a criticism of the teaching profession, there's a lot of parents that complain, and the list goes on, right? I mean, why would anybody get into teaching with all of that scrutiny and the money that is offered?
So, going back to what I said initially, one, it has to be a passion. You've got to be passionate about education, and one has to be passionate about empowering young people. And the moment you have that passion about teaching is exciting. For me, teaching is exciting. I get a real buzz out of teaching. I get a real buzz out of being in the classroom. I get a real buzz about being facilitating in the classroom, and I get a real buzz out of seeing the enjoyment in the young people that I have in my classroom and outside the classroom. And if that isn't happening, then one needs to look at oneself and to be reflective. So it can never be about the finances. It should never be about the M6 or the L2 or the L17 that one needs to get. It should be your inner and most deepest passion. If you are not passionate about educating and evolving our young people, then again, it is not something that one should enter into. How does school recruit? Would like to recruit more graduates and empower them. I think, you know, the government is doing an enormous amount at the moment in recruiting teachers into school. And so, you know, you have the GTP, you have the PGCE, you've got the Teach First, you have quite a lot of programs, and I think that is going exceptionally well. I think is building in that level of support continuously and rigorously for those young persons to actually to maintain the passion that they initially had in wanting to actually become a practitioner, is to have that support network around you to actually lift you up when you stumble, because you will stumble. I mean, we're in a classroom with 32 children. You have quite a lot of dynamics to deal with, learning behaviors and many different areas to deal with. And it's to have that level of support network around you to actually instill and to empower you, not to bring you down, not to say, oh, you're doing that wrong, but to positively encourage you to say, you're doing brilliantly, you know, continue doing the job that you're doing, it's amazing. It's about empowering and instilling that confidence in our young generation that this is a profession that is rewarding, it is fulfilling, and it's amazing to see the outcome at the end of the year, at the end of the day, and even within that space of a 4 to 5 minute lesson, is to see that level of engagement in your classroom. It's an amazing buzz, honestly. It's sort of like you feel so light in that classroom. It's like you're actually flowing as a teacher. And when you plan your lessons are never the same as how you plan it. It's always changing in the lesson, because you may throw out a dialogical question and a young person may answer it, and you filter that around the classroom and you can see the level of engagement, the level of enjoyment, and I think that all encompasses with the passion that they see you as someone who's enjoying their job. And if you're not enjoying your job, and if it's not something that you know that you'll enjoy, then you need to really actually reflect on what your impact will be in that classroom.
Absolutely. I mean, you said you kind of fell into it in some respects. You didn't know you wanted to go into teaching. I mean, you've obviously
No,
grown.
that was purely by accident.
Yeah, so obviously you've had this passion sort of for teaching from the beginning of your career, haven't you, in some respects? I mean, not every graduate goes into the degree thinking they're going to come out of the degree and go in to do a PGCE. So they might not necessarily know how much they love teaching or how much passion they have for teaching until they actually get into the role like you did. With those people, how do we attract them to the education industry?
So what you have Teachers Fair, and also one thing I would recommend for a graduate is to conduct some work experience within the school. Go in for a term. It's quite easy. You send your CV off. Sometimes the head teacher may take a while to get back to you, but continue and go in. Well, actually, just to hit that nail on the head. For me, initially, I had emailed the head teacher at the time, and I believe I sent several emails, and nothing was forthcoming. And I literally walked into the school myself and got to the reception, asked the reception would it be possible to speak to the head teacher. She asked me why. I explained to her, fortunately for me, the head teacher decided to see me at the time. And I'd gone up to his office, we sat down, explained what I wanted to do. And it's about pushing yourself forward, really and truly, pushing yourself forward. Be that person that you want to be, empower yourself. Again, that work experience is absolutely pivotal. Going to school, having that half term or a full term work experience, just to tease out whether or not this is something that you want to do. I do feel that, as you rightly said, we do have lots of graduates that go to university and they do a BEd in education, or they may do a PGCE, whereby they need to attend university and they'll do a 2 weeks placement within a school, and later find that they may not like that and want to do something else. That is a real issue, which is why one is encouraged to actually spend some time before making an application. And once you've done that, then you can then decide whether or not this is the right environment for me or for you.
And in terms of yourself, like what would you say your biggest obstacles were?
I think my biggest obstacles were, I would say, is overlooked.
In what way?
There were times that I felt that I wanted to move forward, and I didn't, although I was actually delivering and was an outstanding practitioner in both in my class and my exam results. I feel that what I wanted at that time wasn't being given, or wasn't being, I want to choose the right word here, I wasn't being facilitated. So I had to push myself forward in order to be where I am.
What do you think? Why do you think the reason for that was? Why do you feel like you were being held back, whether it be externally or internally?
Quite honest, internally that would be within me, isn't it? So internally, one does not hold oneself back. I'm constantly pushing. I'm constantly pushing to be the best. I'm constantly pushing to be the facilitator for our young people. I'm constantly pushing to be the advocate for our young people. Externally, professionally, why I felt at the time, quite honestly, I don't know. I don't know why I felt why I was being held back at the time. I don't want to say that that's happened and that's happened, because quite honestly, I don't know.
Sure. I think with everything that's happened this year, being with COVID, with Black Lives Matter, I mean, like, is there any, I think it's so relevant to talk about this, and if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine, we can move on. But do you feel like there's ever been sort of an element of you being a Black woman in the industry and having challenges because of your skin colour?
Absolutely, absolutely. that was an everyday occurrence.
In what way?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I could give you an example, particularly if I applied for a job up in the north or something. I think one of the questions would be asked is, well, it was asked, shall I say, what would you know about teaching white children up in the north?
What, in those words?
And exactly in those words, and I literally froze because I froze because I didn't at all expect that question. If it had been asked now, it would have been a different case. Then I didn't know what to do with that information. So, and I think at one point during my training, I was told that people like you is not going to get too far.
No way.
And yes, I remember that day I cried till I actually lost my voice. So yes, there were obstacles, but again, I persevered. I used that as my inner power to move forward. And I use that to be my drive, and my drive is to ensure that young people are successful in education, personally, well-being, and emotionally, and to ensure that they're happy.
It's insane. So you had to dig really deep.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well done. I mean, you dug deep, and it's paid off, hasn't it? It's insane because I remember sort of growing up. I'm an Asian boy, right? And I grew up in an area called Chadwell Heath. So I had a lot of friends that were from a white ethnic background, and I remember it was just after 9/11, and they used to call me the P word. They used to call me all sorts of things, right? And it's so important to get that out of our systems, because we're just people, aren't we? I mean, we're just like everybody else. We just want to make something for ourselves, and it's very similar to me. Like, I mean, I started my own company last year, and I never thought that I'd have the opportunity to do that, you know. And it's a shame that we still have people that are still quite narrow-minded to judge somebody on their skin color before they can sort of move up the ladder, and it's a shame that that still goes on. I mean, well done for digging deep, though. I mean, talk to me about the last 7 months, though. How has everything been, sort of, with COVID and sort of the work that you've had to do in your school?
Well, I can only speak from a person's perspective. For me, in the last 7 months, it's been, most of the time I've been working at home, and a lot of my meetings have been via Zoom with practitioners, obviously. And to discuss student progress, looking at the gaps and so on. So it has been challenging on a personal level, and I'm quite certain on professionally also, because we as practitioners, we love that interaction with young people, and we like being in the school environment. So I would say that's where it is for me. Quite a lot of meetings via Zoom, and just being at home, not being able to interact with many people, families, and so on.
And how difficult has that been?
That has been quite challenging, which I believe it's extremely challenging for everyone across the land, emotionally, mentally, physically. Not being able to go outside, not being able to interact with your family. For example, one of my brother actually was in hospital for 20 days, and we weren't able to visit. And whereas they're in a different household, I'm not able to visit mummy and my brothers and so on. So that's been quite emotionally challenged. To date, I have not seen my brother, because obviously we're very cautious. We want to ensure that we are safe and we are protecting each other. And it's really imperative to follow the rules and regulations of the law to ensure that we are not in breach and in any way contaminating anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. My sister, she's an assistant head teacher in a school in Havering, and she stops coming. She hasn't come around our house in such a long time, because she works with the children, and she doesn't want to pass it on to us, as well as if we pass anything to her to not be able to go into school. And I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, is because ultimately there's a lot been said about the NHS and how they're heroes, but I think it's so important to discuss and make people aware how much teachers are doing, and the heroes that they are also, you know, like we haven't had any claps for the education staff yet, unfortunately, which hopefully by the end of this podcast we will, right? But it's to get that name out there, because you are doing a phenomenal job. I mean, you're risking your lives every single day to teach these kids, and you're sacrificing your personal life and things outside of work to be able to accommodate and facilitate the education of the future generation. It's such a difficult time, isn't it, for teachers?
It's extremely difficult, and I think one of the most pivotal thing that's forgotten is that teachers are human. They have feelings just as everyone else, and equally they also have families, and that needs to be recognised, and they work extremely hard. Simply because we're not in the classroom, it doesn't mean that the work has stopped. We work even harder. Our work is 24 hours. It's never stopped. So at the end of a school day, and we've gone home at 5 o'clock or 6 p.m., it still continues, because we come home, we plan lessons, we analyze data, we look at strategic elements, how to move schools forward, and it's never an ending process. So I think that's completely forgotten, and quite possibly not recognized. I think there's a notion that we have 6 weeks in half-term holiday. We're never on holiday. We're never on holiday, to be quite honest with you, because there are so many things to do, so many preparations for the next term, so many preparations for the next academic year. One cannot walk into a classroom without having prepared for the next journey of our young people, and therefore it's a continuous process.
So what would you say to those individuals that have said, I don't know what teachers are complaining about, they've had the last 7 months off?
We've not had the last 7 months off. That was my response.
I mean, just so we can get an idea, like what's the general demographics of the school you work in? Where is it located? What are the students like?
Well, quite honestly, if you don't mind, I prefer not to bring my school into this.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no stress. In terms of like being a part of the SLT though, with everything that's gone on with COVID, how difficult is it to be a part of the senior leadership team, especially with parents? Like, are they supportive? Like, do they blame you?
Parents are supportive, and it is quite challenging. I believe it's quite challenging for every SLT members across the land. You will have obstacles. It is a difficult time. It's quite challenging, and it's an uncertain situation that we're in. We all face it, and so every day has different approaches, and every day has different elements, and it's to come together as one, and to be impactful and to be supportive around your environment and those that are in the and those that who haven't reached out to you as yet. It's for you to reach out to them and to be supportive.
And how difficult is it to build a community with parents and your senior leader like colleagues to build a community that sort of supports each other opposed to kind of blames each other?
Within the education setting, community-wise is always going to be challenging, because as you rightly point out in the initial set of our conversation, is that parents will say this, and parents will say that. That is always going to be that, and that's always been the case. You have challenging parents, you have supportive parents, and also it's to create that buy-in. You will not always get that buy-in, but I think eventually with hard work and perseverance, constant communication, and positive assurance, you will get that buy-in.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like, do you feel that with everything going on that more could be done from sort of the government or from a school's perspective? Like, are we doing everything we can to support these kids?
When you say we, are you making reference to the government, or
we as a country? Is there more?
We as a country, it's complicated. it's really complicated, and I don't think anyone can actually sit down and say, we as a country, we're not, and we are, and we're not doing enough. I think it's deeper than what we actually think, because there are so many elements around the situation, and it's to look at every aspect of those elements and try your best to meet those needs. It's very difficult to meet every needs of everyone that you come in contact with, but it's just to demonstrate a level of understanding. I think that's where the key is. It's try to understand the situation. It's pointless talking about the situation if you lack the understanding. And it's to put yourself in that situation and say, and to look at it and to analyze it. Then you'll know how to respond to it and reach out to those people. Actually, those are the key people that you need to reach out to say, what is it that's going on in your environment? I need to talk to the public, but I don't know what to say. And get those responses from those people who are actually, as you said, at the front line dealing with the situation, because only they can respond effectively and hopefully put in strategic elements, strategic support in how to respond to those things. And if you've not done that, then you will have a challenge. There will be a challenge. Again, you need to reach out to the educationalists, you need to reach out to the teachers, you need to reach out to the SLTs, and likewise, reach out to the young people. Listen to those young people, because they know what they're actually facing. Reach out to the parents. They are experiencing the situation. It's very well standing there and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. But have you spoken to those that have been affected? Until you have done that, I don't think you fully understand what we're doing.
Sure. I mean, I personally, correct. I mean, you may have a different opinion on this, but with Gavin Williamson and Boris Johnson, between the two of them, teaching teachers how to teach when they've never actually walked into a classroom themselves and worked with 30 kids. I mean, with everything that you've said, I almost feel like they haven't done enough, right? I mean, I feel like they've asked you to do certain things, act in a certain way, but they've never been in a classroom. Like, how frustrating is it as an educator when somebody that's never taught tells you how to teach?
Well, frustration. I wouldn't say frustration. I personally would laugh. If you've not been in the classroom, how can you then tell me how to deliver a lesson? That would be my question. And no, frustration. It's more that I will try to model to you how to deliver a lesson in the classroom, and I would show you what the impact of that would be. And then, but frustration for me, no, other people might differ. You might speak to other interviewees and they'll say, yes, it's extremely frustrating to have someone to tell me how to deliver a lesson in the classroom, but I always find that as a power. It's a very good tool for me. The moment you're telling me to deliver a lesson in the classroom, what exactly are you looking for? And how can you determine and judge my lesson?
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I found it absolutely mind-blowing when Gavin Williamson, sort of at the beginning of the academic year over the summer, sort of was telling teachers how to teach, and the guy's only been in the Secretary for Education since like last November, I believe, from the top of my head, and it's insane because he was like the Ministry of Defence or something before, so it's completely out of education related, you know, and it's I find it so bizarre. I mean, with everything that's going on as well, like what's your view on the free school meals over the holidays? Because every year, prior to this year, I know it's a little bit different this year, but prior to this year, every year the kids don't get free school meals over the holidays. I mean, why is it that much more important this year for students to get free school meals over times like half term and Christmas?
Free school meals should always be imperative. It shouldn't be because currently there's a campaign around it by the young footballer, which is my daughter's a massive fan of. Yes, but on a serious note, it should never have gotten to this stage. I really take my hat off to that young man, and respect what he's doing. And you know, it's disappointing that politicians did not realize that. And for this campaign to happen and for them to actually now acknowledge, it should always be an element to support our young people. This is why we pay tax in this country.
Absolutely.
And if we're paying tax and we're putting it into the system and we have socioeconomic groups that cannot afford, it's imperative that those tax monies or funds are facilitated in the right way. So that should have always been paramount. And quite honestly, that's quite disappointing and in some ways painful, because you look at the situation for a young person within a family. Just to backtrack slightly, as you brought that up, a few months ago, I was actually watching GMTV. I think there was a young boy on GMTV. I don't know if you saw that program yourself, whereby I think from East London, and he spoke about the importance for him having school meal, that fresh, warm breakfast, lunch, and dinner prior to going home. And a lot of our young people within this country do look forward to their meals, because often enough you do find that that's the only meal that they have. And even thinking about it now, I'm getting quite emotional, because you're in that environment and you know what happens, and you can see what happens. And some children, if they don't eat within the school, then they'll have nothing to eat when they get home, because that's sometimes the case. And to deprive them of this is an awful shame. So it shouldn't have taken a massive campaign as it is now for the government to ensure that our young people eat and get what they actually should have. It should have been. It is heartbreaking. It should have been absolutely pivotal at the forefront of every educational system, that young people of all ages, of all backgrounds, whether it be rich, poor, everything should have free school meal.
Absolutely. I mean, you've obviously spoken about the campaign Marcus Rashford done, and yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, he's an inspiration to a lot of people, I'm sure, at this time.
Absolutely.
It's just unfortunate. I read an article yesterday. Boris Johnson he's standing firm on not providing free school meals or extra funding for free school meals, and him and Rishi both have sort of explained that in June councils were given a budget of 63 million, right? And the councils have sort of come back and said, well, no, that's only lasted a certain amount of time. I mean, we need more money to be able to feed these kids, and they're standing quite firm on not sort of taking a U-turn on their decision, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
What more can we say to them to help them push their decision and offer free meals, because it's crucial right now, especially with so many people being out of jobs, a lot of families, they're not having an income. And like you said, I mean, I spoke to a head teacher on Monday, and she's informed me that they know that certain kids aren't going to get meals when they go home that evening. So they try to leave any leftover food for lunch. They give it to those kids so they can take home to support them and their families. So, I mean, what message can we send out to the government to make?
I think the government needs to take, if they think that they don't have the budget, take the money out of your pocket. You earn enough money. Take the money out of your pocket and ensure that it's spent on these young people. I mean, when you go home as a politician, you'll have your steak and your cheese and your champagne. Take that money that you're using to buy your steak and your champagne and spend it on our young people. That is simple. It's very well standing there and talking, and as soon as you get home, you're having the most expensive meal. Spend that money on young people.
Absolutely. I mean, from the school's perspective, and you know, there's going to be a lot of people that will question, why can't schools just provide extra meals? Like, well, obviously, I know that there's budget restrictions, but in terms of the difficulty of that sort of for people to say that. Like, how difficult is it for schools to provide extra meals for these students?
Well, I think if you're speaking about budget and so on, it goes back to what you said earlier on. The government said that they'd not had enough money to put into this. So if the government's not facilitating this, it will be challenging for schools to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Could the government do more?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get you there.
Sorry, could the government do more?
Again, yes, the government should always do more. They're doing very small at the moment, and they should actually put their money where their mouth is. They're actually doing lots of talking, but they need to spend money. Our young people are our future generation, and we need to invest in our future generation. And if we don't do that, there will be a massive gap in our system going forward.
Absolutely. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, because teachers, they are making a considerable effort to help the future of our economy. I mean, these kids are the future of our economy, aren't they? And we're already sort of facing a backlog from like not being able to teach them last year, and obviously this year is going to be a bit of a struggle, and whether these GCSE A-level exams are delayed by 3 weeks or not, who knows? I mean, things change every 2 months, if not 2 weeks. And like, what as a whole, we need more teachers in the industry, don't we?
Absolutely, we always need more teachers. It's an amazing profession to be in, and I would personally encourage every young person to actually go out there and offer support to school, whether it be voluntary or paid. We do need more teachers. We need a lot of teachers with passion within the classroom, passion for our young people, passion to autonomize our young people to be successful, passion to make a change going forward.
And with everything that's going on, why do we need teachers more than ever? A, and B, why would graduates why should they go into teaching? Because like, they're probably pooing their pants, right? They're probably so worried about getting into schools. You're on the front line. Why should they be encouraged to get into teaching right now?
Can I just say, you've mentioned frontline quite a bit. Teachers are always on the front line.
Yeah.
It's not because of the current situation why we're on the front line. We are always on the front line. Every single day, our lives are at risk on the front line. We're dealing with many different situations. So, and likewise, it's never about now. It's not really, it should not be about now. And it should not be to say that, oh, it's the current situation we're on the front line. We have always been on the front line. We are the local parents, or we are everything to these young people. So we're always there. We're their parents, we are their practitioners. We are there to support and to instill and to empower. And we've come across many, many different situations every single day per hour. So yes, it's not now that we're on the front line. We've always been. From the moment we walk into education,
yeah,
whether it be in the building or outside, we're on the front line. Because our job is 24 hours and it never stops. We may have 6 weeks holiday, we may have 2 weeks off, we may have a week off. We're never on holiday. We're always on the front line.
Yeah,
and
it's extremely, it's difficult, isn't it? Because a lot of people say, well, you've got 13 weeks off in a year. Like, what are you complaining about? But it's not that. It's not the case. You do planning and marketing. You've got a lot of data input in. I mean, especially as SLT, like, I mean, the level of data input has increased over the years anyway, hasn't it? Because it's much more systematic than it used to be 10, 20 years ago.
Absolutely. It's quite insulting when someone say to you, oh, but you're on holiday. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
No, exactly. I mean, anyone that's doing their PGCE at the moment or looking to get into teacher training, but in particular those people that are doing their PGCE at the moment, what advice can you give them?
My advice is to be reflective and continue to build on your network. It's an amazing, rewarding profession to be in, and to reach out. If you're struggling, reach out to your network and and reach out to people that are not in your network. There are so many people online. Tap into online and reach out to groups and ask for support, and I'm quite sure you'll be supported.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's amazing. I mean, for you as somebody in a senior leader position, what would you look for in anybody that's becoming a teacher or that's going to be applying to work in your school?
Well, not specifically my school, I would say any school, is to be confident and resilient. And again, it's that passion about what is it, why, what is it that you can bring to these young persons, and how are you able to facilitate that? And at the same time, how best can we support you, and how best do you think, what support do you think that you will need along your journey?
Fantastic. No, that's. I mean, look, we'll wrap it up there, right? I mean, you've spoken to us quite a lot. I mean, we've gone through some fantastic topics. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or is there anything that you'd like to say, whether it be to the government, whether it be to future teachers or graduates, or just parents? Like, is there a message that you'd like to get out that we can finish the podcast on?
Well, I would say it's a rewarding profession, and I would say continue the amazing work that you're doing. And welcome to the journey, because it's quite fulfilling. And to know that you have a student or students in your classroom that quite possibly weren't able to access the curriculum, and by the end of the term, that child made progress, and it's a deep inner gracious feeling, and to see that enjoyment on that particular child's face. And again, the parents, is to see that joy on the parents' faces once they know that, oh my God, my child's made such good progress. I was quite worried. You know that you're working in partnership with parents and the wider community to ensure that young people are successful.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, from my point of view, obviously, I'm not somebody that's I'm not a teacher myself, but I've been in education, well, working alongside education for just under 6 years, and I know the hard work that you guys have been doing. So, Alicia, I'd just like to say thank you. I mean, it's not something that we say to teachers as often as we should. But hopefully, after this podcast, we will start getting some more recognition for the industry, for the teaching professionals that are working hard every day. So, thank you so much for obviously getting your message out there and your journey, and how things have been in the last sort of 7 months. And I really appreciate all the advice that you've given and all the feedback you've given. Really.
You're most welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.